working with someone else in combination with having a time limit is like the most motivating thing ever. I have never been more motivated than while working on Code of Copper during that first week or while
Oh my
working
god.
on Harlequins. Hello everyone. I'm Gears.
And I'm Moxvallix, and welcome to the Datapack podcast, episode 17.
Today we are talking about inspiration and motivation. So we will be talking about what inspires us to start making a data pack and where do we get our ideas from, and then once we have the idea, what motivates us to keep on working on it.
I'm going to start. I think for me, I feel like to be motivated, and I feel like this applies to many projects that I work on, but I feel like I need a sufficient level of challenge to really be motivated to work on something. I find it difficult to maintain interest in something that's a bit too easy. And also, like, once I've solved something as well, it can be hard to keep motivation on that project once I feel like I've solved the tricky part of it, which can be a bit of a problem sometimes.
I think I agree with that. I think, yeah, like solving hard problems is, or like challenging problems is definitely interesting. Sometimes it's like I have an idea for something and I'm like, oh, or like for example, when a new snapshot comes out and I'm like, oh, this could be used to make this, this, and this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I could make that, but I feel like it's just gonna be super easy, so I'm not even gonna bother. I'm just gonna store that information in the back of my mind. So I feel like I have a lot more data pack knowledge than is actually portrayed by my projects, because I feel like I don't actually have that many published projects.
That is I think a difference is even though like for a lot of my projects I do have this need for it to be challenging, there is something as well that motivates me about trying to be the first. This is
Mm.
another thing that definitely motivates me, is if I can be the first one to make this project or implement this thing, that's another big motivator for me because I like the feeling of inventing something.
Okay, so
So
let's talk first maybe about the inspiration, where inspiration for an idea, like where you get an idea for a data pack from at the beginning. So
mm,
I find for me, it comes from a few different places. Sometimes it is another video game. So, for example, after I watched some people playing a game called Plate Up, I don't know if you've seen Tango Tech playing
I
that,
have seen a
Marks.
bit of
I
Tango's.
got super into. Oh yeah, and he also made it in Minecraft, right? I got super into Plate Up at one point by watching various people, and then I kind of wanted to make like a data pack that simulated Plate Up. I never ended up getting around to it, but that was like an idea I had. But yeah, now Tango's making it. When I saw like Tango's had a video titled Plate Up in Minecraft, I was like, oh my god, this is exactly what I wanted to make like months ago, but I never did it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, sometimes it comes from another video game. Sometimes it might come from something that has already been implemented, but not as a data pack. So, for example, Code of Copper, right? People have made plenty of programming languages, but no one had really made a fully working programming language in a Minecraft data pack. We got the idea for regex, you know? There are plenty of regex implementations, but none of them are in Minecraft data packs. Or
Mm.
Fungecraft, right? That was from Bufunge, the Bufunge programming language, but then I adapted it into Minecraft. And I think the last place that I get inspiration, real life. I wanted to make a
Yeah,
realistic simulation of electricity, for example. Or like not
yeah.
not realistic, but like an electricity thing that was like more realistic based than redstone.
How does that work? Is it like so it always has to be like a full closed circuit kind of thing, and then it can like short circuit and stuff like that,
Yeah, and then
and
there's
you can
stuff
put it in.
like charge, so instead of just having like an infinite power supply like a redstone block or a redstone torch or lever, you need to actually generate power somehow via like solar panels or wind turbines or whatever, and then store them in batteries and stuff.
That actually would be kind of a cool data pack to make.
Put it on the list.
Um, put it on the list, on the infinite GMDU list. I feel like I don't have as set processes for coming up with data packs. I feel like for me, ideas just kind of come out of like talking to people about some things. Like a lot of ideas I've had has been like just discussing with either Gears or Wolfian or anyone else about a part of the game or something like a new feature in the game. Or just sometimes I'm like just thinking about things like, just shower thoughts, and then I'll just have an idea for data packs. I feel like I haven't actually made that many data packs, however, that don't serve a purpose. I have ideas for them, right? But then the only ones I end up making, apart from like, the experimental ones that like from the new snapshot, and I just make something to test the new features. Like for example, I made a GUI library, right, to make GUIs. And that came about from the RPG data pack project that we started. And it needed a GUI, so I made a whole library for it. Yeah, I feel like my inspirations aren't as clear as your ones are. I feel like they're just a bit all over the place.
Yeah, well, okay. I'll say one more thing. Another good place to get inspiration is just by seeing other people's data packs. Yeah, you might be tired of hearing this, but in the Smith Summit, when we were, going through the booths, right, seeing all the different things that people had made, and like, sometimes you're like, oh my god, I didn't even realize this was possible with data packs, and like, you've just unlocked a whole new world of possibilities for things that you can do. Sometimes you're just like, oh, that's a really cool trick. We were talking when we were recording the video for this about this Impossible Minecraft data pack. This guy, what's his name, McMackenstein or something? And he did a whole video explaining how he made, mostly how he made the dragon fight. We'll link that in the show notes and description.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like, definitely check it out.
So much cool stuff in there. And one thing that stood out to me was the way he used enchantment glints. So he had like an invisible item texture and then enchanted it so it had the little enchantment glint. Basically stretched it so it made like a cool force field effect. If you just take the enchantment glint by itself, it just looks a bit like sort of a shiny enchantment glint thing, but I think the way he did it, I didn't fully get that bit, but I think the way he did it is he essentially used item display transformations to stretch the texture, and sort of rotate it so it looks like a sort of, like a force field. I mean, there's not really a good way to explain it using words. You kind of just have to see the video of it.
I'll try and put a clip of, like a little clip of it for anyone watching on video. But yeah, that looked super cool. You mentioned, you were talking about seeing other data packs for inspiration. I have a weird thing around that, right? And I think it somewhat stems from like part of my motivation being to do things that haven't been done before. Is like, I have this thing that once I've seen someone do it, I'm really not as motivated to do it. I'm like, oh, it's already been done. Even though it's like, oh, I could put my own spin on it, I could do a slightly different take. There's something, it's just like, it's suddenly a lot less motivating once I know someone else has worked on the same thing. And I think it's a bit of a problem, honestly. It definitely limits what I end up working on. But yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why that's there, but that's definitely something there. I definitely get inspiration for like, techniques, I guess. But like for example, if someone else had done Code of Copper before we did, I don't think I would have wanted to work on the project. Like if someone else had made a text-based like programming language in a book, I think I would have struggled to make like my own version of that. Yeah, I don't know, like, but then again, I was like happy to work on a take of an RPG, right, which has been done countless times. So it's weird, like sometimes I guess it's there's a part of it that's like overcoming a mental barrier of, oh, someone's already done this, right? And like the problem is like if you ever search anything on the internet, you're gonna find someone's already done everything, right? Which means
Yeah.
oftentimes when I start a project, and this is bad, you shouldn't really do this. I don't go look. I purposely avoid looking to see if anyone else has done it, because then I know if someone else has done it, I'm gonna lose so much of my motivation about making something cool, right? So like the bad thing is I usually will search if someone's done it near the end of me like working on it. Like I did this as well for the I recently implemented a UUID converter for the Zoglin standard library. I did not look up to see if anyone else has made that data pack. I just tried to figure it out. And I obviously my implementation is not as good as the one that someone else did, right? Yeah, I was just learning how it all worked basically, which I think was a good learning experience. But yeah, I purposely just didn't look it up because I knew, oh, someone else has done it. I'm not gonna then try. I guess I'm just gonna be like, oh well, people just go use that, right?
I think there is definitely times when you do want to, like, reinvent the wheel or recreate something for your purpose. Like, I think, for example, yeah, like your example of the Zoglin Standard Library, I think that's quite a useful thing to have in a standard library as opposed to having it be a third party thing that, like if there's something that feels like it fits with the rest of the things that you have, especially in a library, I guess. Like, let's
Mm.
say Moxlib, right? It's got lots of functions for working with strings and arrays and objects and maths, right? I mean, people have implemented plenty of maths functions. Like, does Moxlib have trigonometry functions like sine and cosine? It doesn't, does it?
I don't think so.
No, okay.
I'm
I
not
was
good at
I was
trigonometry.
gonna give that example, but never mind. But let's say we did want to add trigonometry to Moxlib or the Zoglin
Yeah.
Standard Library. Plenty of people have implemented sine and cosine in Minecraft before, but that's not to say that we shouldn't make another one to
Mm.
go in with the rest of the things because it kind of fits.
Yeah,
Or
yeah. But like I guess my point is like, and I 100% agree. Like I I'm still going to be implementing, and I'm probably going to be taking a lot of inspiration from this, like the the much better written UUID library that I've now seen, right? And like honestly, if I had started from looking at that and built on that, I would have had a lot better one than I've got currently, right? Which was just me working it all out with like a spreadsheet and stuff, how to do it, and it's just actually balked implementation, but it works. Um, but I guess my point is that there, once it's been done, like there's this element of excitement that I lose, right? And I can still work on it. I can still like, obviously, I'm still gonna. We still plan to add that to the Zoglin standard library, right? But it's just like, oh, it's adding the power function. It's adding the like, yeah, Moxlib has a bunch of those things like power of absolute, any kind of math operation, but there's no, it's not exciting to implement, uh, you know, to the power of in Minecraft. I feel like, or at least I don't find it as exciting or
I
inspiring.
I'm not sure I have that problem really. I quite like finding some algorithm or function or something which you sort of take for granted maybe in other standard libraries, like a sorting function, and just like trying to re-implement it by myself and figuring out how it works. Like a while ago, I was looking at the Rust vector, which is essentially uh, an array which can grow and shrink dynamically at runtime, right? And I was like, okay, how does that work? I want to understand how it works. So the best way to do that is just to make my own. So I made like my own vector class with with
Yeah.
all the heap allocations and all stuff like that. And I quite enjoyed doing that, even though it obviously had been done and I didn't need to do that at all.
On the flip side, right? Like quicksort is an algorithm that pretty much every language has an implementation of, right? It's a very common sorting algorithm, but I really, really enjoyed implementing that for Golem script. I guess with quicksort, right? I don't know. I feel like the difference here versus the UUID, right? That project pretty much, like, looking through that code, it's as optimized as it really can be, right? I've looked at it. There's very few things I would change about how it works, right? It's basically if I was to write one as optimized as that, it would end up looking like that. That's the problem. And I guess, like, to the power of as well, right? You implement that, it's a recursive function that just keeps multiplying it until the number reaches 0, right? Once something has been solved, right? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's that solved problem. Once I feel like the solution's already been solved, then it loses some inspiration for me. It loses some excitement. And so I think that's how I can be motivated on things that I haven't seen done in MC function before, like quicksort. Now, I mean, there's probably is other implementations of quicksort in MC function, but I didn't look them up.
I guess it's just subjective. Like some people find certain projects more interesting than
Yeah,
others, you know? Like different people are interested in different things. And that's
yeah,
just
yeah,
the way
yeah.
it works, you know? Okay, so
Yeah.
now that we've talked a bit about where we get the ideas, the initial ideas for our data packs from, let's talk a bit about like finishing data packs and what motivates us to actually bring them all the way from the beginning till the end.
That's the tricky one, isn't it?
It is.
It's easy to start a project, not easy to finish one. Let's start with you, Gears.
I kind of struggle with this. I feel like here's the thing. I think where I get my motivation from in general when making something is my use for the thing I'm making. For example, let's say here, this isn't a data pack, but a while ago I wanted to make a little CLI tool to play music because I wasn't really happy with like Spotify because that requires an internet connection and there's ads if you don't pay for it and all sorts of stuff. And I was just like, I just want to have my files and I just want to be able to play music from a command line without having a GUI or anything like that. So not VLC, anything like that, right? And I was like, okay, I want to make this and it's only for me to use. And I know exactly what I want it to look like. I want you to type in the thing and then you give it the list of songs or the playlist. And I want to be able to do all this. And so I made it, right? And yeah, I came out with an app at the other end and it was easy to motivate myself to do it because I was like, I know exactly what I wanted to use it for and I really want to be able to have a thing that does this. And so I was like, that was my motivation. Whereas I feel like with data packs, and we've said this quite a few times, even though we make a lot of data packs, we don't generally play a lot of data packs, whether that's other people's data packs or the data packs that we make. And so when I'm
Yeah.
making a data pack, I'm not really making it for my use, right? I'm sort of making it for other people. And I actually kind of struggle with motivation in that case because it's like, it's two problems, I think. The first one is if I fail to finish the project, what's going to happen? Nothing really. I wasn't relying on the data pack. Like, you know, with the music thing, I was like, okay, I really want this. So if I don't do it, then I don't get to use this tool that I want to have, right? Whereas with the data pack, since I'm not planning on playing it anyway, it's like if I don't make this, nobody even knows that I ever was going to make this. And so it just doesn't really matter. And so
Yeah.
I think I sometimes struggle with the motivation in that case. I'll go over to you, and then there's a few more things I want to add afterwards.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit. I think that's one of the reasons why the data pack jams have been so successful for, I feel like, myself, and I feel like you as well, in just motivating to finish a data pack, because it's like you've got the time pressure, right? You've got then the pressure of like you've said you're going to be submitting this data pack, right? And sometimes you've got other people on the team, right? And they're expecting you to do the work as well, right? So it's like, yeah, if it's just a personal data pack, right? There's very little additional motivators apart from your own self-interest, I suppose. Right? Whereas like once you've got the jam structure, there's a lot more motivators outside of just personal, I guess. But something interesting there is I feel like I'm a bit different on the like making things for other people motivation. I feel like for me personally, uh that is a big motivator for me is is this going to be used by people, right? For example, and this is not really a data pack project, but it's arguably my longest running project pretty much just by myself. And that is I develop a Minecraft skin editor, right? And this is funny because this kind of breaks my earlier thing of kind of, you know, not liking to do something people have already done. Everyone's made a skin editor. There's plenty of them online, right? Um and in fact, my skin editor is a clone of one that went offline. But what's really kept me motivated is that it has a lot of users, right? People keep visiting the site. There's like a decent sized Discord community around it with people like active sending messages every day. And that's like, honestly, I barely use the site, right? For myself. I'm not a great pixel artist. I'm not very good at making skins. I've uploaded a couple skins to the site, but not nearly as much as a lot of the other users. And yet I'm still motivated to keep working on this project, even though it's not really for me.
Yeah, I think once you have people using your thing, that's like another story. Like I feel like if I had a data pack and people played it and like, oh, this is really cool, keep making more of this, I think that
Mm,
would motivate me to make more. But when it's like in that initial stage where you don't have something ready to release yet and you've just sort of got an idea and it's like half
mm.
implemented and you like nobody else in the whole world knows it exists or it is ever going to exist, I feel like that's the hardest part. And I also think
Yeah, no, no, you're
for
right.
me there's another factor which it's sort of along the same veins as what you were saying earlier. Like I I do quite like a challenge. And then when it gets to the sort of tail end of the project where you really have to like polish the data pack,
Mm,
that's the bit I struggle with. Like that's partly one of the
yeah.
reasons I like technical data packs so much because they don't require so much polish in the same way.
Mm,
Like, okay, so I'll give you an example of like my most recent project I was planning on making but never really got round to finishing it was like a revamp of the food system. I think I've mentioned this a couple times on the podcast before, where you would have to like keep track of different amounts of nutrition values. So there's like vegetable and fruit and grain and fat and protein, and
mm,
each food has a different value, and then depending on that, it will give you like positive, negative effects. So one thing I enjoyed doing was just implementing the systems and having like a way of just having data driven things so I can easily add the the different values of the nutrition scores to all the foods in a data
Mm.
driven way. So that was fun to do. Then the next thing I wanted to do was to make a little GUI where you could see all of the different nutrition levels, because I wanted like a pretty way to see it. And so I came up with a solution where I would retexture leather horse armor to be essentially a square with some amount of white and some amount of black. And then I used the dye color, which has now been
Mm.
properly in 1.20.1.4. You can now properly do like tints and everything, but back then it was sort of a bit hacky. And I feel like I hadn't really seen people do that before, even though someone probably had.
Mm.
I used the dye color to essentially color it, and then I made like little sort of progress bars which showed like how high each nutrition level was, and then they were colored based on how high they were. So at the bottom they were sort of red, and then the top they were bright green. And I just really enjoyed implementing that. And then once I had that done, then it was a case of figuring out how to translate the amount of nutrition levels you had to like what the positive and negative effects would be, and then also decide like exactly how much of each value foods should give, and like how do you lose that nutritional value, because otherwise you just
Mm.
eat some food and then you just be on full the whole time, right? So it got to that point, and then I was kind of stuck, and I really didn't know what to do, and I just sort of lost motivation because it wasn't anything like fun to do now. There wasn't like fun hacky things to like try and figure out like the progress bar. It was so fun just like playing around trying to get a function that turns a progress value from 0 to 100 both into, like the correct custom model data, but also into the color it displays, and then getting all that to work with the models and the textures. After that, it was just kind of tedious. I feel like it would just be like playing around with tweaking values until I got something that felt right. And I feel
Mm.
like I'm also not that good at judging, like, what would be good, what's balanced, because I feel like that requires quite a lot of play testing, and yeah, I just feel like I'm not very good at that. So it was at that point where I was just like, I just really don't know where to go from here, and since nobody else was relying on the project existing, it just kind of sat there, and I haven't touched it since, really.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so I think something that does definitely motivate me, as you were saying, is the jams. So having like a time limit definitely helps. Um, One thing that certainly helps with motivation as well is having a good idea of what the final product's going to look like.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I have an idea and I know exactly what I want it to look like. So, for example, the circling back around to the music player, right? I knew exactly what functionality I wanted it to do because I had the experience of like, using Spotify and then using VLC with downloaded files, and then I was like, okay, what is missing? What do I want to have from this thing that I don't currently have? And then I could easily come up with a design and like, okay, that's fine. Whereas with the food thing, I was like, okay, here's a general idea. I want to like make the food system more interesting. I want to have these different nutrition levels. I want to have this fun GUI that you can see the values in, but I don't know exactly what the mechanics of the data pack are going to be. Like, I know I want it to be like, so you have to balance out the nutrition so that you get like positive effects, and if you don't, then you get negative effects. But how does that exactly work? I don't really know. I don't know. I feel like I sort of jumped into the project because I wanted to try out implementing the stuff I did know what I wanted to do. After I'd done that, I just kind of got stuck. And I think something
Yeah.
that we've done, which is very good, for example, with Code of Copper, we planned out pretty much exactly what we wanted to be in the data pack.
Yeah, yeah. We did that as well with Zoglin. We had a whole language document which really did help the early development. I feel like we've strayed a bit from having a document there, and I feel like obviously once you're working outside, like it's really good for to get the initial picture of the thing, right? But once you also need to be able to be flexible with it, I feel like, because as you're doing something, you can encounter like different issues with the original idea, I suppose. Basically what I'm saying is I think we need to make another document for compile time. uh, because
Yeah,
I have no idea how that works right now.
yeah, so that is definitely a thing that happens. Like, you have an initial idea and like, okay, this is gonna be super cool, and this is how it's gonna work, and then you try it out and it just doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, in like a gameplay data pack. Like, let's say you got an idea for a really cool boss fight, right? And you
Mm.
have this element in which you think is going to make it really interesting, or like a specific attack or a mode that the boss goes into, and then you implement it, and then you try it out, and it just doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't have quite the effect you thought it would, or maybe it's too hard, or maybe it's not hard enough. And then,
Mm.
yeah, there's definitely a case of, yeah, you do have to go back to the drawing board and redesign it. But having like a goal from the beginning
Yeah,
definitely
yeah, yeah.
helps, because otherwise you get to a point and you're like, okay, I don't know what to do. I'll just stop, and there's not really any further you can go from there. I think another thing that motivates me, at least, is working on a team with people. When you're working by yourself, and as I said, nobody else knows that the project exists, there's nothing stopping you from just ditching it forever, other
Mm.
than your own, motivation or whatever. But when you're on a team, you have like an accountability partner, right? If you
Mm.
don't do what you said you wanted to do, then you're letting down the person you're working with, right? And it goes both
Yeah.
ways, obviously. So yeah, working on a jam by myself, it gives me like when I tried to work on some of the Datapack jams by myself, I had some motivation of like, okay, I got the time limit, but I also like if I didn't make the thing, then nobody was gonna know that I was even planning to participate in the jam in the first place. But like, I think working with someone else in combination with having a time limit is like the most motivating thing ever. I have
Mm.
never been more motivated than while working on Code of Copper during that first week, or while
Oh my
working
god.
on Harlequins. Having that, like, okay, it's 3 days and we know exactly this, this, and this. So I think with both Code of Copper and Harlequins, we did something very right. We had, obviously, the time limit of the jam. We had an accountability partner, each other, right? That we needed to
Mm.
do our part, to we need to both do our part for the thing to come to fruition. And we also had a pretty good plan, especially with Code of Copper, of exactly everything we wanted to implement. And so then it was just a case of doing the thing.
It's interesting you bring up those two jams because I have, for me, in terms of motivation, Code of Copper was definitely like my motivation was at 150%.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that may have been the most motivated towards a project, or at least a programming project, like I think I've ever been. That first week of Code of Copper was like I've talked about this before, but I was away. I was on holiday,
Uh huh. Yeah.
and I still managed to find the time every single day on this like spotty 3G internet that was just going in and out constantly to implement an absolute atrocity of a parser. But just like I like put in the hours every single day, and like I feel like any other project, I don't know if I would have I would have just been like, nah, I'm gonna go to the beach. Nah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna go do any of the fun holiday activities that I have at my disposal, right? But yeah, I'm sure everyone else there hated the fact that I was doing this, but I had to get this done.
Yeah.
Whereas Harlequins was weird. Uh, I found that one really hard to be motivated about, even though it was like my idea. I feel like in that project you were a lot more motivated about it than I was. I quite struggled with my parts of the Harlequins data pack, and I'm not entirely sure why. It was a very similar conditions, right? It's like time span of a week. We've planned pretty much how it's going to work beforehand, right? Come up with a pretty cool idea, and then just something just wasn't clicking. I feel like, and I just was really struggling to, I guess, put pen to paper and just sit down and properly do like I mean I did end up doing it, like obviously uh if I had been more motivated it probably would have been a much more polished data pack. But yeah, I really struggled with the motivation on that one, which is it's interesting to hear like for you that was like a really motivating project.
Well, okay. For me, it was kind of interesting. Like, when you first proposed the idea, I was a bit iffy. I was like, is that gonna work? I don't know. That's not really like anything we've done before. That's
Mm.
not really what I had in mind at all. And like, I don't even know how that would happen. And then as we sort of planned it out, I sort of was like, okay, maybe that can work. I guess I'll give it a go. And if we fail, then whatever, it's been a learning experience. And then I started playing around with the idea, right? So I was doing the classic and the modern island. Okay, here's one thing that I can absolutely recommend as a motivation tool for a lot of things, right? Data packs, programming in general, or even other things. Music, right? Music is. I mean, maybe it's not for everyone, but for me, music can be incredibly motivating, right? So in Harlequins,
Mm.
I picked like three different albums that I wanted to listen to at the time. And I put them on using my music CLI tool. Um,
Oh, nice, nice.
and I just like, okay, I'm just gonna listen to this music and I'm just gonna get it done. And even if I'm not enjoying the coding part or the building part or whatever, at least I'm enjoying the music, right? I just sort of got into like a flow. I don't know. It's like um I did the classic island first, and so I loaded up Minecraft Classic on my browser, and I was looking at the terrain, and then essentially copying that in Minecraft, and it was just quite fun, like playing around with the classic terrain and making that in Minecraft. And then the modern island, that was quite fun as well, just like taking a slice of real Minecraft terrain and then adapting it and playing around with the shape of the land and putting in a fake mine shaft and everything like that. And then the
The
staircase as well.
disintegration effect,
Uh
and
huh.
yeah, the staircase was also quite cool. The glitchy like texture on it. Um, as well, like yeah, I feel like we did end up managing to do quite a lot of cool effects in that data pack, even though like the yeah, I mean, and this is an area of struggle for us. Is the polish of data packs is definitely like I mean that was our lowest scoring category I think
Probably, yeah.
in the judging of it. I think was like we got pretty good creativity, technicality, those were both good, and then yeah, polishness was not good.
I think with
Yeah.
that one, because we both took a while to warm up to the idea, I feel like. Maybe you
Mm.
never warmed up to it fully. I don't know exactly how you felt, but I feel
Yeah.
like for me, yeah, it took like a couple of days for me to really get into it, and then after that, it was still quite a while before I got all my things done, and then that final day was just such a crunch. Like, you know, the 80-20 rule or whatever, the
Mm.
first or the last 20% takes 80% of the time. That's kind of
Yeah.
what it felt like. Like, it felt like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done the modern and the classic islands, and I've implemented all the code to do that, and you've done the beta and the whatever whatever we called the other one. What did we call the 1.8 island?
Release era, I think we called it.
Release, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you did the beta and release islands, and that's all done. So okay, we're almost done. So we just got like a day to polish up everything. No, we had to do the credit scene. We had to do like the tunnel linking into the city, and then add in
Yeah.
the final piece right at the end of that.
Yeah.
We had to
Thankfully,
add all the
Wolfian came
dialogue
in
in.
clutch with those
Oh
things.
yeah, Wolfian
Oh, the dialogue.
with those two, yeah, the dialogue. Um
And
and
Wolfian with the
just
dialogue as well.
uh-huh.
He wrote the dialogue. I feel bad. Like we had left so much of that stuff to the last minute, and I was just like, Wolfian, please come fix this. Yeah.
But yeah, like all of that together is just like a massive crunch. I feel like if we'd maybe sort of got going a bit quicker, then we maybe would have had a bit more time to
Mm.
polish it, or at least been a bit more relaxed going into the end. We had the same thing with Code of Copper, really. You know, like the last day was just doing
The
stuff.
last day was non-stop doing stuff, but I feel like with Code of Copper, okay, there's a few reasons. Obviously, like there's the limitation. I was on holiday as well. Like even though I was like pushing it hard, right? It's also like I'm not at home. I don't have like a full setup. I don't have two monitors. Like my I don't know how you were going at that time, but I was definitely not as productive as I could have been given a better environment. And obviously as well, there was just stuff like there's just stuff you don't think about until that last minute. It's like
Hmm.
even if you planned everything beforehand, you just there's just things that you inherently just kind of like, oh no, that's not really that important, and oh no, that's not really important, and all of those things add up and
Uh-huh.
become this like huge task at the end. It's like it's not that hard to set the text, the custom model data for this thing. Oh, now there's 14 models and we have to go through and do that all. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's not that hard to what was one of the protocol? Oh, it's not that hard to add structures into the game. Never make that mistake.
Uh-huh.
You'll be up at 5:30 in the morning adding structures into the game.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
I feel like
yeah.
Code of Copper did have that same crunch at the end, but I feel like our motivation for that was there since the very, very start.
Yeah, I
Like it
definitely
didn't
think
have that
that
warm up.
I was motivated on Code of Copper like nothing else, like you said.
Mm.
Like the excitement of making a programming language, like after that, I'm gonna say it again, 23W03A
Yeah.
snapshot. I was just like, oh my god, it's so cool. And the jam, and then just everything just came together. It just felt so like we were meant to make Code of Copper at that point. And yeah, it was
Mm.
just. But yeah, I think for both of them, I mean, the fact that we did finish Harlequins, you know, and get something that was presentable, if not as polished as we would have liked it to be,
Mm.
within the time limit, given how much there was still to do in that last day, like that does show that we were quite motivated.
We still definitely by the end of it as well. I yeah, like as I said early on, I was really struggling for motivation, but definitely by the end of it, like once I did the city, the disintegrating city, like I think implementing that, I was like, oh, this is really really cool. Hang on, there's something here, and then like seeing your island disintegrating, right? Seeing how the glitch texture turned out in game, the wandering trader pathfinding that you brought up just out of the blue, and then it worked really well.
Hmm.
There's like all of these like little things just started like compounding, and then by the end of it I was like, oh my god, I'm super motivated on this. And yeah, I really just wish I'd gotten that same motivation that I had near the end earlier. Also, that credit sequence was an actual nightmare to implement.
It was, but it was
It
so
is,
cool at the end.
yeah, it is really hard to detect a player entering and the end portal and teleporting them away before they actually do.
Yeah,
That is
I
not
remember
an
that.
easy task.
Uh huh.
And I don't think it even works correctly in the current version of Harlequins. I think it's a bit balked. The sequence starts before, like, going into the main end portal, not into the after Dragon end portal, which is not good.
Oh right, yeah. Whoops.
Basically, you teleport to the end, but then the script triggers saying that you were in the portal frame,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
it triggers the end sequence. It was cool.
It was cool.
And yeah, that's another thing I really just wish had more time to do, because having a polished version of that end sequence could have been like really, like, even the unpolished version of it was still pretty cool, but like I really wanted it to be like, it seems like this end sequence is actually happening. And maybe this is something I reckon shaders could probably help with, like nailing down this end sequence where it all just seems like the regular credits. How we did it is, it basically, the music stops and you get teleported away. But I really wanted something like a shatter effect, or
Yeah.
something where just the screen just, and I don't know if you can do this with a shader. I assume you can, where like just the whole screen just like shatters into like lots of pieces, or
Oh, that would
something
be
like that.
cool.
Just something to break out of the end credit sequence would have been like that. That's what I was envisioning, right? And obviously I couldn't execute it in the time frame, but it's something I think I would like to revisit one day, is hijacking the end credit sequence. Talking about this kind of makes me want to do another Datapack jam.
Yeah,
I'm kind of motivated
we
now.
we never participated in the second Imagination Jam, even though there was such a cool image,
Like
which just felt
sci-fi
like,
image.
yeah,
It was, yeah, that was hard, because like, and I mean, we got in a voice call when the image was announced and talked about it, and it was hard. Like, we just couldn't come up with an idea that clicked.
I mean, it was a cool image, but it just, I mean, I guess it felt a bit vague. Maybe we just couldn't
Yeah,
come up with anything concrete. We did come up with the idea for the card game from that, though, didn't we?
I
Which
think so. Yeah,
is
maybe.
something we'll probably talk about in the next episode. But yeah, we
Yeah.
didn't actually make it for that. We just sort of stemmed that into its own project. I wonder if we could somehow implement these like tips for like, or like the timed aspect, plus everything we've talked about today. Somehow implement that in our other projects and say like,
Mm,
okay, here's the thing, we're going to have this done by this deadline. I'm not
yeah.
sure if that would work though, because
We
one of the things
tried it.
about the
We
jam is like it's an externally imposed deadline. Like you physically
mm,
can't submit your pack after the deadline, and so that's that. Whereas if it's just a self-imposed deadline, I'm not sure how well that would work, but we could try it maybe.
well, I feel like we almost did. Like, something we worked on for a period of time is we were working on an RPG mod with Wolfian, right? And we haven't done any work on it in a while. I think Zoglin and Smith Summit kind of came along to
Yeah,
uh replace a lot of our intention there. But that is one thing we tried to do, was set like project deadlines, right? Have this thing done by this date and have this thing done by this date. And I feel like it kind of worked. I got like a working UI demo done in time for the deadline. And obviously you got the like skills model, and even got like an arrow skill. I think what happened is, there's a few things, like, even though we had it done by the deadline, I feel like we didn't actually have a proper meeting at that point, and we
yeah,
didn't then set another deadline. Like,
and
it kind of just tapered off.
then we did Zoglin and then the Smith Summit, and then here we are now.
Yeah, here we
Um,
are now. Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. It could be interesting to try and like do some more of that. And also, I feel like
Mm.
we didn't have a specific set of features we wanted to be done by that deadline. We were just sort of like have something presentable done.
It was a bit
Um,
vague.
but like having a
Mm.
specific goal in mind, I feel like we could maybe try that for Zoglin or something,
Ooh.
or the
I'm just
card game
thinking,
when
right?
we design it next episode.
Another project for me to add to my ever-growing list. What if, right, so this jam experience is quite, you know, core, right? So what if we what if there was like an app, and you set up, it's like a personal dev jam, and it's basically a game jam, like the Planet Minecraft jam, but you just set it up for your personal project deadlines, and then you have to like submit it. Like it's just a fake game jam kind of thing. I don't know. That could be a cool project. But yeah, it is tricky once it's self-imposed, because it's your rules. You can very easily break them,
Yeah, that is
and
one thing
then
that's difficult with motivation in general. It's like, yeah, if if you say I'm going to do this thing and then you don't want to do this thing, well, the person who said that you're going to do the thing now doesn't want to do it anymore, so there's nothing forcing you to do it. Yeah, so I feel like something like that might work, but only if we like really stuck to it. I think something like that does sort of need motivation. I think that helps to like guide the development process and just ensure that we're moving at a steady pace, but it also
yeah.
requires us to have some base level of motivation and like, yeah, I'm actually going to do the thing that we said we're going to do.
And yeah, I feel like as well, it has been really good, you know, uh, working together in GMDU, right? I feel like we've got a lot more done than we would have otherwise working alone, right? Even if we're just like pair coding, I feel like, for example, if I just started Zoglin by myself, I feel like I would not have gotten anywhere near close to what Zoglin is now, right? I feel like I would have lost motivation in like a week. Part of that is probably obviously I'm not very good at Rust. I'm a very novice
Oh,
dev there.
sure, sure. I mean that's another element of it.
I feel like I just doing it myself, right? I feel like there's an extent where I'm just like, there's not really anyone else working on this with me. I'm gonna move on to the next thing, kind of thing. I have a problem where I just move on to the next project, right?
Yeah, I definitely do that as well.
I feel like because we semi regularly voice call dev sessions, even if we don't have a specific project that we have in mind, right? I feel like just because, we're kind of like holding each other accountable, it means that our different projects that are in rotation get worked on. Like, even if we do then split out, and like we've tried this recently with Zoglin, splitting off into different tasks and doing it separately and then just reporting back in. Even the fact that there's another person involved is a lot more motivating than, yeah, if it had just been myself kind of thing.
Another motivating thing, even if it's more general, is just that a project is fun. For example, you were saying if you'd done Zoglin by yourself, you might have just given up by a week.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what you would have done, obviously. Even you don't know exactly what you would have done. But for example, for 2 years now, I've been interested in like compilers and programming languages and stuff, right? That's why we made Code of Copper, and then I'm interested in doing like Zoglin, and for quite a while I was working on my own programming language, which didn't have any particular use case. I just kind of wanted to go from essentially nothing to having a working programming language that can be compiled. You can make programs with it. I'm even was potentially going to make like a language server and just learn about all the different components of a programming language, the lexer, the parser, the type checker, the compiler, LLVM, all these different things. It wasn't going to be for anyone else, really. I didn't really think anyone else would be interested in it. I just kind of wanted to make it. And I just really had fun doing it. Like, working on that compiler was just, like, my favorite thing to do for quite a long time. And so I kept working on the project for, 6 months or even more, just motivated by the fact that it was fun and interesting. I haven't touched it in a while now because I've been so busy with other stuff, but I was motivated to do it for quite a long time. So that is just one more thing which can, really be motivating if you just find a project genuinely very fun to work on. And I had a lot of fun with Code of Copper as well. When we were sort of in between, after we'd done V1 and it had sort of got off the ground, and then all the way leading up to the version 3 release, that time when we did like 2 or 3 times a week pair programming, rewriting the interpreter. That was just a lot of fun to just implement the
That
different
was a lot
parts.
of fun.
Yeah.
That interpreter was really fun to write. Just like the way, we because we decided to go with the full rewrite, which is always a a risky choice. I think it paid off quite well. I understand how that interpreter works so much better than I understand how my own parser works. I have no idea how that works anymore.
Time for the parser rewrite.
Time for the parser rewrite. Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely be down for doing a Code of Copper parser rewrite at some point.
There was quite a good talk at the Smith Summit, a panel by a guy named Super Red called Finishing Your First Datapack. We'll put a link to that in the description and show notes as well. Covered some of the stuff here, and he shared some of his own ideas, and I really enjoyed watching that, and I think I should probably rewatch it at some point and just remind myself of all the tips that he gave so that I can use them in my own projects, because I don't know, sometimes I can just be super motivated with something like Code of Copper or my compiler or whatever, and sometimes I just, don't have that motivation as much. That is the end of the episode. So, yeah, we've been the Datapack podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, our website, or wherever else you get your podcasts. You can also join our Discord server to discuss podcasting, Datapacks, and Minecraft in general.
Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.
Bye. It'll be 2085. Like, we finally implemented it and we released it to the public on GitHub. What is Minecraft? Listen here, Sonny.
Back in my day.
I've got a lot to tell you.